Back in September of 2024, I made a choice. I went all in on high yield income. I cleaned out my portfolio, sold everything I had, and converted that amount to Tesla and NVDY from YieldMax. My buddy from work continued making regular contributions to the S&P 500 via ticker SPY. Hey, what's up, Jake? I've often wondered if I made a mistake. Now that I've quit my full-time night shift job, I can't afford to be wrong. So did I sacrifice my future, my family's future, for immediate income? The high yield income strategy is certainly controversial. When I revealed that I made $9,600 from my $113,000 portfolio in October, the comment section was full of people screaming, "NAV erosion!" and pointing out that I was heading towards a disaster. So today, I'm going to backtest my exact portfolio balance and see what would happen if I'd gone the growth route instead of betting my future on YieldMax. And this is in real time. I haven't actually ran this calculation before, so you'll get to join me as I find out if I made a terrible decision. Let's check it out. So we're gonna start with a few assumptions. I went all in on YieldMax in September of 2024. At that point, my portfolio was worth 80,000 Canadian, or about 57,000 USD. And the deposits that I have made since then amount to about 75,000 Canadian, or 54,000 USD. So we'll use those USD numbers in our calculations. By the time October 2025 rolled around and I quit, my deposits were up to 95,000 Canadian. So we added about 20,000 there in 13 months, or about 1,100 per month. So let's plug these numbers in to a calculator I found and see which would be better, SPY or the Tesla NVDY route that I chose to go. I'm not sure if this is the best calculator to use, but I found this one at portfoliovisualizer.com, and I've plugged in the numbers here. So for settings, we weren't able, I guess we could go month. Okay, I didn't notice month to month before. Let's just change this up. So 2024 October, and then we'll end actually in, September, and we will end in October. Calendar aligned, sure, I'm not sure what that means. So our initial amount was 57,000. We're going to contribute a fixed amount of 1,100 per month, contribution frequency monthly, and we're going to leave most of this other stuff alone. We're going to reinvest the dividends because that's what I was doing during this time period. And if we come over to the portfolio assets, I've put in a 50-50 split of NVDY and TSLY here, and I'm going to benchmark them against the SPY. Now, why am I using SPY? Well, because that's what my buddy Jake was investing in. That's always what we would talk about when we talked about a growth stock. I'm not into picking individual stocks and hoping that they'll do really good. I did play around with this calculator using the underlying Tesla and Nvidia, and wish I had chosen them, but that's not what I was going for. So we're just going to compare to the SPY, because had I gone with a growth stock back in September 2024, that's what I would have gone with. So let's analyze these. So our 50-50 split here, TSLY and VDY, our return was 78.7% versus I think the benchmark on SPY is 34.2%. So I think that means that my options brought me out ahead. Starting balance and end balance, yeah, and this is pretty accurate to where I was sitting. So I got a 78.66% return during this time period, and if I had put that all into SPY, I would have been looking at a 44.47% return. That's crazy. I actually thought this was going to go a different way. I thought SPY was going to win, and I'd have to talk about why I still support my position. So we can see for a period here in April, Yeah, I remember April. That was painful. The S&P did outperform my portfolio by a little bit, but then as they both recovered, my portfolio took off to have a pretty big margin of difference. And annual returns, we don't have too many years to look at because I just did a short test for when I actually would have been doing this. Why did I end this in October 2025? Because that's when I quit my full-time job and started relying on this income. So a large part of why I went with this YieldMax income portfolio was so that I could test if the payments made per month were going to be high enough to supplement my income, pay for my family of five's budget needs every month without reducing our quality of life that we've come to be accustomed to. So I fully expected the SPY to win out. If we took out the dividends, I'm sure it would. And so it's interesting to me that my high yield portfolio did actually beat the S&P 500, even though we hear constantly about people screaming about NAV erosion, about how a market downturn is going to ruin my portfolio. The comment sections are all full of this stuff. And like I said, I'll be honest, I expected them to be fairly accurate because I do feel those market downturns. When they go down, my portfolio drops and the income drops too. I was just looking at this week's coming payments. They're well below where I would like them to be for me to be comfortable, but they're not bad. They're still going to pay for a lot of my weekly or monthly bills. And with the income from my tech business, my family of five is doing just fine. But I really expected to need to talk about the psychology of why I still think that going with income was a smart idea. And that's because I was able to look back at over 13 months of getting payments that outweighed what I was making at my full-time job. I was getting paid more in distributions from my YieldMax portfolio than a full-time salaried night shift position was paying me. So having that history to look at assured me that I could take the leap, I could quit my job, I could follow my dream of running my tech business full-time without it affecting my family, without worrying about how the bills were going to get paid, because I had that income coming in without me having to lift a finger. Anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. I'm probably going to play around with this portfolio visualizer a lot more. It seems like there's a lot of cool options that I could learn, and maybe I'll share some other portfolios that I've thought about, or you guys can suggest portfolios for me to have a look at, and we can test how they would be. Anyways, that's all for today. Have a great one.